To me, the desert is a peaceful place. I'm alone. It's the best place I can go to hear the Lord. And to be out there, it brings back memories and thoughts of Afghanistan. It's taught me how fragile life can be. You never know what's going to happen. In an instant, things can change.
Before this, I just kind of let regular days just kind of go by like they were just normal. And now little things seem like big things to me. Putting my children to bed at night, waking up in the morning and making pancakes. I don't view those things as little things anymore. They can stop at any moment. And that night, things stopped.
9 June 2012 started out like any other day. We were going after a high-value target, so we got the guys up, loaded the trucks.
I was in the car with my sister. We were getting ready to go to dinner.
We rolled out the gate. We were in the valley. We were all joking and talking, and the explosion went off. Blew the truck 27 feet in the air. And the blast instantly killed Tyler Davis, who was my driver. They said that I was dead for about 27 minutes, and then somehow I came back. They were sitting there filling out the paperwork, and my heart was starting to beat. And I sat up, and everybody was like, what the heck just happened? At the time, I knew God, but I didn't have a relationship with God, so I didn't know what was going to happen. Somewhere in there, somebody got the bright idea of bringing me the satellite phone and having me call my wife.
I remember my phone rang with the ever so familiar unknown caller. I always answered. And it was John, and he sounded very, very different. And I made her pull over the car so I could hear what he was saying more clearly. And I could hear John's shaken voice.
I told her that there was a lot of blood.
My back hurts.
Couldn't feel my legs.
And then a voice came on the phone and said, ma'am, we're going to do everything we can to save your husband.
We'll do everything we can to save your husband's life.
And I can remember the line going dead and getting out of my sister's car and running into the middle of like an abandoned parking lot. I don't know where I was going, but I needed like the world to stop turning.
I spent 6 months in the hospital, learning to walk, learning to talk again. My family is the most important part of my life. And I watch my daughters sit on the floor, playing with Barbies, watching movies with me, just trying to get better.
It was 33 surgeries in 6 months. And I can remember getting very frustrated with the doctor one day, and he said, ma'am, it's like a car crash on steroids. Your husband was not supposed to survive this. His heart and his determination is what got us through recovery. Doctors would come in and they would say things like, this man is never going to walk again. He would say, I've got girls to walk down the aisles at weddings. I will be walking down those aisles.
Yeah, Tyler.
Don't take too much tea.
A little bit.
So 2012, I hit the ID. And then started recovery after that. I was going through physical therapy. I was going to the VA constantly. I got a job, started working, and I started searching for what I was missing in the Army.
He kept looking for this adrenaline rush that he couldn't fill. And just being at home with us every day, he wasn't getting it. He was on a path of self-destruction.
I was trying to run and gun still. Could have ended either in death or in jail for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. The more that we tried to mend ourselves, the more I knew that God was missing in this picture. And so I was looking for a faith-based military marriage retreat, and Operation Heal Our Patriots is what came up in my Google search.
Sarah had talked to him and told me that it was a salmon fishing trip in
I showed you the
Alaska.
video. I showed you the video, though.
like a week before we left.
And I may or may not have said it's a fishing trip in Alaska with just a teeny tiny bit of Bible study.
A little bit of Bible study. You know, our week in Alaska, every person either shakes your hand or hugs you or talks to you. You know, you see this beautiful lake right in front from your cabin, and you're just like, oh wow, this is awesome. Next day you get up for breakfast, you know, you do devotional, and then we went on an open boat with Ralph and went out, and towards the end of the day I caught a big old pike. And then you have a class that night.
When you look at this verse, you say, there is a time to tear down and a time to mend. Many of you guys have gone through a season where you've been torn in your marriages. You know what? This is a time to mend.
That's when it kind of hits you that this isn't a fishing trip. You're in for something else.
To change John's heart, it was going to have to be something pretty strong.
For me, when I got called out by Chaplain Steve and said, hey, we need to have a private conversation, it all came home, and I was like, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. That's when I opened up my heart and let Jesus in. So you have your week, and you bond with 9 other couples. And when you leave Alaska, we're still in contact with all of those couples.
I was afraid that once the week was done, that was it. And I like that it's a for a lifetime. We're gonna check up on you, we're gonna pour into your marriage, we're gonna give you more tools. It's not just like, oh, here's a week, everything's fixed, see you later, bye.
It's 100% a family.
The first accident in Afghanistan, it felt like the world was crumbling. And then when John was injured in Texas, we were just, it was kind of like we can do this.
In May 2018, I went down to Texas to go on a hog hunt. We were hunting out of helicopters, and I was like, oh, it'll be cool. Everybody's like, oh, it'll be so much fun.
And I got a phone call, and she said, have you heard from the guys? There was a helicopter crash in Texas, and the guys were on it.
We ended up hitting a tree at 75 knots, 65 feet in the air. And when we landed, the helicopter actually landed on my legs.
And my immediate reaction was, you're lying. No. I could not believe my ears. Part of me just went right back to that day in Afghanistan. And John was the one that said, we're gonna stop right now and we're gonna pray. I knew God was gonna do something big with John, but I never knew that God was going to light such a fire inside of John. The call from Afghanistan, I got a shaken, scared, unsure husband. The call from Texas, he was in a lot of pain, but he was completely calm. This story, it doesn't define us, but it defines who God is in us, who God is in this marriage. And had we not participated in Operation Hail Our Patriots, I don't even want to think about what our situation would have been like without it. I've never been more thankful that I fibbed about a fishing trip in Alaska.
Me too.
Well, good morning. I'm obviously Sarah. This tall drink of water next to me. Yeah, this tall drink of water next to me is John. We want to take a minute and thank you again for coming today. Welcome to the Springs. We're really happy that you guys are here. Let's see. Other than I fibbed, which is not my favorite part of that video.
I still haven't been salmon fishing yet.
You caught, did you guys see the size of the pike that this man caught? I mean, I think we need to
It wasn't a
get
salmon.
We need to get over it. But my favorite part of that video is the part where it says, this story doesn't define us, it defines who God is in us. It's my most favorite part of the video because for me it was the realization that all of this happened for a reason. I can't tell you that I tried to see God in this from the beginning. When these two kids right behind me got married way back in 1998, when we fell in love and got married, the part of the story that you just saw in that video was not part of my plan. In 1998, John and I were just a couple of best friends who, against all odds and against the few strong opinions of others, fell in love. It wasn't my plan to have our story be anything other than my being a wife to this handsome dude, mommy to these 4 beautiful daughters, and the happy participant of a quiet, uneventful, all-American life. Here's the thing, though. None of this, the good or the bad, has been my plan. I may be living this story, but my life, John's life, all of our lives have been a part of God's plan. So sometimes we find ourselves asking ourselves, if it's all part of a plan, why does God let things like what we just saw in that video become a part of it? Jeremiah 1:4-5 says, "Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you as my prophet to the nations." Before we were born, he knew us. He ordained our days for us to become prophets, people who share not our stories, but his. When we read this, we can rest assured that the timing of God is always perfect. God is never late. He's never early. He's always on time. And the life that I have, that you have, the times in which we all live are all by perfect choice. We're here in this city, in this state, in this year, today, here in this church by divine design. You were born where you were born, grew up where you grew up, learned what you learned so that God could use you right now, today. Not according to what you believe your life should be, but what he has ordained it to be. Not just knowing this, but believing this can really change our perspective. The truth is that God predicts the future with 100% accuracy and has it written down, not for our own glory, but so that all can see his faithfulness. Proverbs 21:1 says that the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and like the rivers of the water, he turns it where he wishes. Like a river, there are 2 sides to the things in our lives as well. Many times when we're in trouble or when things don't go our way, we're prone to blame it on the devil or some type of spiritual warfare. Could it be? Yeah. But also think about this. Could God be in it? Could he be using this part of our story? Of course he can. He's at work. We just have to let him tell it. Your story, my story, it's all our story. But it also is his story. But maybe you're here today and you're thinking that your story isn't something that God can use. Maybe it wasn't a helicopter crash. Maybe you're thinking my story is too small, or maybe my story is so big that I can't handle it, so I'm certainly not going to be able to tell it. Maybe you believe that the things that are happening to you or right now, or maybe things that happened to your past, couldn't possibly be happening to you, and they couldn't possibly be a part of his plan for your life. So John and I have a little something to show you about that. Do you need my help? Can I have one, please? Even though you didn't catch a salmon, can I have one? I'm going to take a pink one. Okay, this, we all know, it's a ping pong ball. But for today, this is our story. This pretty little ping pong ball is my story. So I'm going to say, this box is full of all of our stories. So I'm going to say, did your husband get into a helicopter crash? What else happened? Can I say a few? Did something awful happen to you in your past? Are you in a job you can't stand?
Did you lose your job?
Are you in a relationship that's struggling? Did you have parents that just weren't there? Do you have friendships that are struggling? Do you have an illness that just won't go away? What is your story?
Have you not found God yet?
Is everything crashing in around you and on top of you? Go ahead and do all of it.
And like life, it overflows.
Seems like, it's all over the place, right? Isn't that, this is me. This is me. Between my kids, between the things that are going on right now, possibly a move to Texas that's driving me a little crazy. All of it, it all comes crashing down. But let's shift our perspective. Could God be using this mess? Could he be using it? Psalm 38:15 says, "For in you, O Lord, I hope. You will hear, O Lord my God." Another version of this verse says, "Lord, I will wait for you. You will answer, Lord my God." So maybe this means when everything is crashing and piled up on top of us, we start praying a little bit more. Maybe we start making church attendance a priority. Maybe we join a life group and stop doing life alone. Maybe we get into the Word of God, even, hear me out, when it's not a Sunday. Maybe we start applying what we read to everyday life. In fact, we start doing all of this so much that our friends, our family, everyone around us starts to wonder what's going on inside of us. Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going. We may need a little bit more God to get all that out of there. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
It's holy water.
Keep going. It does it at its own time. We're making it quite messy in here. Probably need a little bit more. As you can see, the more that we fill ourselves up with the Holy Spirit, the more that all of this just can't possibly stay on. Go ahead. Your stories, all of our stories are all God's stories. And when we surrender our stories to Him, when we allow Him to do His work inside of us and allow Him to tell His story through us, when we allow Him to heal us, our hearts and souls are so full of God that nothing can hurt us. Just go. Just get off there. God's here. Just get off. Just go. Bye-bye. See you later. Go away. Bye-bye. 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 See you later. Now, this doesn't mean that bad things won't happen, because let us be real. Just because you get saved doesn't mean your Christian life is going to be an easy one. But it means that when those things do happen, I'm going to get my arm wet a little bit. It means that when those things do happen, I lost my job. Do you see what happens? It can't get in. It means that when we're so filled with the Holy Spirit, bad things, sure, they're going to happen, but they sit on the surface. They sit on the surface because we have someone in our corner. We have the Lord Jesus in our corner, making sure things can't get right back in. It means that if He can form us in our mother's womb, then He can restore what is ever broken and put us back together. It means that our story becomes His story told through us. It means that He can mold us, shape us, fine-tune us, and sometimes even move us to Texas. The only question now is, will we let Him mold us into what He wants us to be, or will we go back to our old ways? And now this dude next to me is going to take over.
Is it easy to stay on this path? No, it's not. I could have easily folded up when I got in the helicopter crash and said, hey, I'm going back to my old ways. But it takes that inner passion of letting Jesus into your heart to accomplish that goal. But Jesus challenges His people to become better followers, believers, and servers. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take you there, pick up their cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their self? Luke 9:23 through 25. But what about His plan? His plan wasn't part of my plan. I had a completely different plan. And as you saw, an IED, a helicopter crash, took that to redo the plan. It was exactly 42 days from the time I heard the call to go into full-time ministry that I got in the helicopter crash. And could have easily, like I said, folded and said, God, put down the pipe. I'm hearing something different. But no, I stuck to that path, stayed faithful the whole time I was in the hospital, laying there with all those stitches, not being able to move, and just kept pushing on. And I don't know what his plan is, but maybe it's like uprooting from Tennessee and moving to Las Vegas and starting a church. Sorry, I had to take a shot at Brian. Or leaving the comforts here in Las Vegas and moving to Texas.
To a city we've never even been to.
Ephesians 3:1 says, "For the reason I, Paul, the prisoner of Christ, for the sake of you Gentiles." Paul calls himself a prisoner of Christ. He didn't say, hey, I'm a prisoner of the Jews or of Rome. He was a prisoner of Christ because Christ allowed it. Christ was his captor. With his attitude and many of God's faithful servants, when Job's camels were kidnapped by the raiders, he didn't blame them. He saw God's control. He said, the Lord give, the Lord taketh away, blessed name the Lord. Job 1:2.
That's right. Sorry.
When Joseph's brothers bargained him or begged him for mercy for selling him into slavery, he said, what you meant for bad, God meant for good. Genesis 50:20. These servants saw God's salvation over everything, even the workings of evil, men and Satan himself. This is important because if God's servants don't see him as salvation, they often become bitter. When bad things happen, they focus on their own failures, the evil works of men, the evil works of the enemy, and they focus, and God is lost. Hebrews 12:15 says, see it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no better root grows up and causes trouble and defile many. Bitterness in the heart causes people to miss the grace. And it also causes trouble and defies many. Instead of being bitter, faithful servants, we see God's salvation over everything. Paul knew he was a prisoner, not of Rome or of the Jews. Do you see God in control of all things? That's the hardest thing that I've struggled with, is seeing that God controls everything. Our God holds the king's heart in his hand like a watercourse. Proverbs 21:1. Even the roll of the dice is of him. Proverbs 16:33. For our God is salvation, and as we've heard Pastor Rory say and Rosie say in both their testimonies, God truly works all things of the good of those that love him. Romans 8:28. Y'all see a pattern? Cool. I want to take this time and tell you about a couple ministries that are near and dear to my heart and Sarah's heart. These ministries Sarah and I have worked closely with over the last year or so. As you saw in the video, Operation Heal Our Patriots not only saved our marriage, but more importantly, changed my heart. Operation Heal Our Patriots is a ministry of Samaritan's Purse. And for those who might not know who they are, Samaritan's Purse is a Christian humanitarian aid organization that provides aid to people in physical need as a key part of Christian ministry work. That's a mouthful. The organization's president is Franklin Graham, son of famed Christian evangelist Billy Graham. The name of the organization is based on the New Testament teachings of the Good Samaritan, in which Jesus uses parable to teach people one form of the golden rule: love thy neighbor as yourself. Samaritan Purse works in over 100 countries around the world. From Operation Christmas Child to International Relief to Operation Heal Our Patriots, as you saw featured in the video. Operation Heal Our Patriot has recently launched a brand new ministry called Team Patriot that will work closely with Samaritan's Purse U.S. Disaster Relief Team, where veterans and their family who volunteer to assist homeowners in national disasters. For those that don't know, within 24 hours of a natural disaster, Samaritan's Purse deploys anywhere in the United States. They have trucks in Dallas, trucks in North Carolina, and those trucks deploy anywhere in the continental United States where there's a natural disaster, and Team Patriot follows on right behind them. Ever since I got the call to go into full-time ministry, it's been Sarah's prayer that God would make our path very clear to us. We began to pray that if we weren't hearing him correctly, that a huge boulder,
Really big.
huge, would fall in the middle of the road, and that would make it pretty clear that we weren't supposed to go. So the only question now is, when God sets out a clear path for his servants, will we believe him and will we follow his lead? Here's that answer. We sold our house the very first day. We secured a rental house the next day. As you can see, God's hand in all of this. We are seeing him so clearly, in fact, that this coming Tuesday, we pack the moving truck. Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock, we follow his lead, and we head out to Granbury, Texas, which neither one of us have ever been to. We've seen it on Google, though. And as you saw,
It's really pretty.
Sarah's pretty nifty with Google searches because she found Operation Hill Our Patriots.
Good. I see. Thanks.
Proverbs 2:8 tells us, he guards the path of the just and protects those who are faithful to him. The last ministry that I want to talk to you about is one that's near and dear to my heart, and that's Battle Forge Nation. Battle Forge Nation is a organization that's sole purpose is to stop veteran suicides, and that also with first responder suicides. Their website, if you Facebook search them, Battle Forge Nation, exactly how it sounds, it's all one word. Their sole purpose is to deploy people around the country to help those veterans or first responders in need. And I'm proud to lead that team to help as many of my brothers and sisters as we can. And a lot of those we've even got to turn to Christ, which is awesome. So we're advancing that ministry too, and advancing the kingdom. And it is all for his purpose. It's 100% for Christ. The only way to heaven is through Christ. If you ever saw Billy Graham speak, no matter the young Billy Graham, the middle-aged Billy Graham, the old Billy Graham, he said the same thing every time. There's only one way to Christ, and that is through Jesus Christ. So open your heart and accept Jesus Christ and join a life group.
You got to pound it like that.
As you can see, life group is the way. When the helicopter crash happened, before I ever called Sarah, I called. I called Pastor Brian and I called Scott and had them in place and motion before that. And Tracy stepped in and said, Scott, stop, pull over. You're not going to the house.
The ladies will handle this.
But that life group kept us going, took our kids, made sure everything was good. And as you heard Pastor Rory talk about in the beginning about tithing, I was 100% 2 years ago against tithing. And now since we've been tithing and we've trusted in God, things have turned around in ways that are unexpected. Whenever you don't think you're going to have the money, suddenly it appears. But you have to trust in God. You have to trust in Jesus. Thank you all today for coming. I'm going to hand it back over to Pastor Adam.